All right, shalom, shalom. I want to start off this lesson slash exhortation by giving all praises, glory, and honor unto Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai Bahashem, Rachak Kodash. Double honors unto my elders and my apostles, a great millstone, which are the men that rule well, the men that taught us His truth, peace, blessings, and salutations, as always, to the elect. All right, and I might change the title, might not. But for now, the title will be "Speaking is Good for You." And when I say that, I remember, I've definitely made lessons on this topic before. But I was hanging out with one of the officers, one of the Sharim here in the DC church that's over me, and some gems came out. Being as he's a man with more years of experience being in this truth, and some of the gems that he obtained through his trials and tribulations were shared with me, and through the Spirit, man, I just these precepts were flowing in my mind today. So I said, let me make an exhortation and speak on it, being as though this is something that in this truth, which what he told me that stood out to me the most was, we're, our own therapist in this truth. You're, your own therapist. Yahweh Bashem, Yahweh Shai. The Spirit of the Lord is your therapist. The brothers are your therapists. Because, we're in therapy, man. Ain't none of us, all of us that came into this truth, man, we're all sinners, all right? And, we're all sick. All of us, every single one of us, some more than others, some less than others, but nonetheless, we're all sick in need of the physician. Yahweh Shai said, he came for those that, he said those that are whole are not in need of the physician, and he's the physician, which the physician is a true doctor. A doctor means to falsify. A physician actually heals you. A physician, can actually heal you. All right. And one way that the healing begins, in this faith is, speaking. All right. Whether it be, with a brother you confide in or to Yahweh Bashem, Yahweh Shai. Both are important, very important, all right? Especially to the Lord more than anybody, man, Telling the Lord how you feel, you can't take this whole, he knows everything, so I don't got to say nothing. Nah, that the you speaking part is for you. It's not for the Lord. The Lord already knows what you're going to ask for and what you're going to say before you say it. The speaking part is for you, okay? And that always reminds me of the book of Job, chapter 32, which the elder Kasat Magan here in the DC church. I remember when he brought this out, man, years ago, man. And I emphasize it like that because I was just so young in the faith, and to hear something like this in the Bible, growing up, you don't learn these scriptures, and when you come into this knowledge, man, it's such a beautiful thing that you truly begin to profit from the scriptures, for your health and your well-being, your mental state of mind. You really begin to profit, in those areas through the scriptures, man. And that's where the true substance comes from, the true understanding, That's what makes this wisdom so valuable. The fact that these things are written here and you can take it and learn from it. So this is Job 32:19. Behold, my belly is as wine, which hath no vent. It is ready to burst like new bottles. I will speak that I may be refreshed. I will open my lips and answer. Right. And one way, that you can vent correctly is, obviously speaking at the camp. Brothers know that's, it's very therapeutic to speak the words of the Lord. But another is straight up, casting your burdens upon the Lord, man. The mental strain, the mental burden, talk to the Lord about it. Tell him what's hurting you, and especially, and I'm going to read it in Sirach, speaking to a godly man or a brother in the camp or a brother that you trust. And I say, I emphasize on someone in the truth because nobody's going to understand you more than someone else, another brother that's in the truth, man. Ain't nobody in this world is going to understand you, no matter how many trials and tribulations they go through. It's never the same as somebody who's serving Yahweh Bashem, Yahweh Shai. So I'm going to read Job 32:19 again, because it says in the NLT, though. I'm going to read it in the NLT. Job 32:19 through 20. I am like a cask of wine without a vent, like a new wineskin ready to burst. I must speak to find relief, So let me give my answers, right? So you have to speak to find relief. And I remember I made a lesson, a while back, and it's titled, I believe I titled it, to get rid of depression, to get rid of, and I titled it along the lines of something to depress, you have to express. Essentially, in this truth, you get burdened with so much, you know, anxieties and worries and trials, tribulations that sometimes you fall in and out of depressions. But for you to get rid of depression, you have to express. It's the opposite of depression, because depress means to be pressed down, and expression means to, exit, to let out. That's how you express yourself, and this is one way to do it. This is one of the most best ways to do it. Even the scriptures tell you, when you, going through something, have brothers pray for you and confess your sins, confess your faults before one another. And why is that said, though? Because it's a relief. I must speak to find relief. So let me give my answers, right? So no matter what you're going through, you gotta talk about it, man. Whether it be to yourself, to the Lord, or to a brother. Don't hold nothing in, man. Hey, in this truth, man, not even before the truth, man, most of us have some level of trauma. But being Israelites, we were under the curses, we're still in captivity. We don't like to say we're under the curses, man. Once you find out you're an Israelite, you're serving Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai, we ain't like under the curses like these 2/3. Yeah, we're in captivity and things like that, but we ain't no in the world dudes, So, hey, you don't want to have that mentality, man. All right, the mentality of just, we under the curses, but nonetheless, man, all this trauma that we have obtained through the world, all these traumas that really have negatively affected our personality. That's why when you come into the truth, there's so much dross to get rid of, man. The world taught you to be lazy. You don't mind being late to work, and you know what I mean, procrastinating. These are all attributes that the world gave us. And in this truth, those attributes have to go, and they're going to be replaced with the fruits of the Spirit, So that's the thing, man. When you come into this thing, man, you got to, certain problems, man, you got to speak about them. Things that weigh you down. So I'm going to read Sirach 37, and really that's the only thing I'm going to grab after this. I'm going to read it twice. First in the KJV, and then I'm going to read it again in the GNT. All right, it doesn't say GNT on here in the screen, but I copy and pasted it from the GNT. All right, the Good News Translation. But I'm going to read it in the KJV. First it says, Sirach 37 and 10. Because I emphasized about speaking to a brother. Consult not with one that suspecteth thee, and hide thy counsel from such as envy thee. Neither consult with a woman touching her of whom she is jealous. Neither with a coward in matters of war, nor with a merchant concerning exchange, nor with a buyer of selling, nor with an envious man of thankfulness, nor with an unmerciful man touching kindness, nor with the slothful for any work, nor with an hireling for a year of finishing work, nor with an idle servant of much business. Hearken not unto these in any matter of counsel. All right. So, what's being said here, it's very important. And the way I want to tie it into this lesson is when you look, actually, no, I'm going to keep reading and then I'm going to read it again to better explain it. Because, the KJV, the Old English, uses bigger words, and I want to make it simpler. All right. You got to look up some of these words we got to look up, man. We ain't grow up speaking, saying, hey, that's a merchant man over there. You know what I'm saying? We didn't learn that. So I want to make it simpler. But nonetheless, let me read verse 12 to, I'm going to read verse 12 and I'm going to read it again. Here's the point, really. Be continually with a godly man whom thou knowest to keep the commandments of the Lord, whose mind is according to thy mind, and will sorrow with thee if thou shalt miscarry. So now I'm going to read it all over again, starting at verse 10, I believe verse 10 in the GNT. Don't ask advice of anyone who doesn't trust you, and don't give advice to anyone who is jealous of you. Don't ask a woman for advice about a rival of hers. a coward about war, a merchant about a bargain, a buyer about selling, a stingy person about gratitude, a cruel person about kindness. So if you look, it's all opposites. You wouldn't ask a coward about war, would you? So you also wouldn't spiritually vent to somebody who's not in the truth. That's not something that you would do. Okay, somebody who's in the world is not going to be able to relate with you. Maybe on some carnal shit. Okay, cool. But as far as the spiritual thing, because we go through so much spiritual trials in our minds, man, these people would look at us so sideways if we even begin to talk about those things. The way that these evil spirits try to attack us, they're just not going to get it. Okay, so it says, a lazy person about work, a casual worker about finishing a job, a lazy slave about a difficult task. Pay no attention to any advice they may give. Instead, rely on someone who is religious. All right, obviously, who are the true religious ones? It's us that believing in Yahweh Hashem Yahweh Shai and the 100% truth. All right, beginning with Great Millstone, our elders, apostles on down, and brothers that preach the same doctrine alike. Right. Rely on someone who is religious and known to keep the Lord's commands. Someone who is sympathetic with you, who will be sorry to see you fail. Right. And that's the thing. There's a saying in the world, they say that your father is the only man that wants to see you doing better than him. And of course, usually that's true. But in reality, that applies to brothers, man, the brotherhood. There isn't too many sincere. There isn't too many that fear the Lord on this earth. So the main people that we should be, talking to are our brothers, man, the brother right next to you. The scriptures say, let brotherly love continue, because in reality, this is just one, we're all in a spiritual war, and the only comrades we have are those in the truth. Ain't nobody in the world, our true comrades, our true brothers in arms. These people in the world, whether they know scriptures or not. I remember I had this one chick I used to work with who I could have a level of spiritual conversation with him. But then when, because he knew he was an Israelite, and, I didn't say too much about my business. I just, said, oh, yeah, I know too. And we had a level of conversation. But come to find out, Jake was just unwise. As nice as he was, as beautiful of a person as he might have been, he was off. He just wasn't right. And really there was a cap to the spirituality that we could discuss. And then come to find out, he was never really in the truth because of the way he believes is not right. And he don't believe in Yahweh Hashem Yahweh Shai. That's when I really knew, oh yeah, conversation with this Jake gotta end. But you live and you learn, and you realize, hey man, ain't nobody gonna understand you, and you're not gonna be able to talk to nobody but somebody who's in this truth. All right. And if you're a brother that don't got nobody to talk to, in the sense that you might be at a camp or you by yourself, you gotta be Yahweh Hashem Yahweh Shai, man. May the Lord, send fruit your way if you're somebody that's camping out by themselves. But I'm gonna read verse 12 again. Instead of all these, right, rely on someone who is religious and known to keep the Lord's commands. Someone who is sympathetic with you, right? No one else is going to sympathize with us the way that a brother will. No one else is going to understand you. Because even if a brother hasn't gone through the same trial as you, especially if it's a brother with tenure, he's most definitely have gone through much more, right? A brother that has a year or more over you, right? The Lord, that's the thing. The Lord puts us through things for the next man, right? But it says what? Someone who is sympathetic with you, who will be sorry to see you fail, right? No one else is going to care but brothers in the truth, all right? And no one else is going to sympathize with us other than a man that believes and fears Yahweh Hashem Yahweh Shai, all right? Because what? They fear the Lord, so they would want what you were asking them for, they would want you to give it to them as well. How they say keep the same energy. Yeah, we all would want, a level of love for each other, man. If you felt some type of way, you would want somebody to help you get back up, right? So, hey, you got to speak, man. At the end of the day, it's all about, talking to one another and being brotherly, because the true therapy is in this truth. And it ain't just you. You obviously have to look at the man in the mirror, and a lot of these trials, really, you're going to face them on your own. But there's going to be some where you got to talk to the bros. There's going to be some where you got to talk to the brother and let it out and be like, yo, man, this has been messing with me, man. And I've been going through this, going through that. And sometimes, man, that's all it takes. You don't even really need an answer. Sometimes it's just you let it out and you feel like a weight's lifted off your shoulders. So speaking is good for you, man. All right, speaking about what you're going through. All right, and there's balance to it because you don't want to overburden somebody else with your issues, but there's just certain things, man, that you gotta let out. But hey, nonetheless, man, that's all I wanted to bring out through the Spirit. I really sincerely hope this was exhorting and edifying. All right, I want to give all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh B'Hashem Yahweh Shai, B'Hashem Rachakadash, double honors to my elders, my apostles of Great Millstone, which are the men that rule well and taught us this truth. Peace, blessings, and salutations to the elect as always. Shalom.